We are very, very excited to jump into this next project. It's something that we've been wanting to do for a while now. We've just now been able to get to this project several weeks after we got the item here in, and if any of you are interested in this sort of thing, you probably already know what this is. For the rest of you, we got ourselves a incubator. It's the GQF 1502 Sportsman. This thing is fantastic. It has automatic turners, it's got an automatic hydration or humidification system. So all of the things that you normally have to keep up on a day-to-day or weekly basis with incubating, we're jumping into it with both feet, set it up so that we have the highest chance for hatch rate, and that means something that keeps the humidity and the temperature constant and consistent and does a lot of the work for you. So this is maybe a little more than what some people would want to do getting into incubating and hatching. We just decided, why waste any time? Let's just go for it. I watched quite a few videos and done a bit of research on incubating and hatching. We're going to start with quail eggs, and eventually we'll get into chicken and maybe even duck eggs down the road. So it's something that is going to basically help us be self-sustaining, self-sufficient, so that we're not having to rely on outside hatcheries, at least for maintaining our flocks. So what we have now, as long as the eggs are being fertilized and as long as we're collecting them and keeping them so that they can be hatched, we'll be able to maintain our own flocks. All right, so let's pop this thing open and see what's inside. What I'm doing here is just testing these for hatchability. Basically, you can do that by dropping them in water, and if they sink to the bottom and lay on their side, they're perfect. If they float to the top, then they're not so great. So this one floated right to the top. I mean, it just sat right up there like a little bobber. That one's done. It needs to be taken out. The rest of these, they don't quite float to the bottom and lay on their side. Well, this one finally did. So what I'm letting them do is I'm just going to let them sit there and hydrate for a couple of minutes, and once they fall over and lay on their side, then they're good to go. Also, we're trying a little experiment with this first hatch, and now maybe you shouldn't do that, but we're gonna go ahead and do it. Experiment that we're doing is these eggs are up to 2 weeks old. So we've been saving eggs for 2 weeks now. Now they say you don't want to hatch eggs that are any older than 7 days. 7 days maximum. So I've got an entire tray here that I know is over 7 days. And I'm curious to see, just to see, so we can experience it for ourselves, what happens if you hatch a bunch of eggs that are over 7 days. We're not even gonna fill the incubator, fit up to 6 trays in this incubator, and we've only got 2 full trays. So we figured, might as well, if we're running the incubator anyway, do a little experiment, see what happens when you try to hatch up to 2-week-old eggs. Now, just from the hatchability test, I can tell you, 95 or 94 eggs, we've only had one that is absolutely not a candidate. The rest of these, it's likely, based on what I've read, that they won't hatch at all, but we're gonna give them a chance and just see before we throw them out or use them as dog food. I wanna know what happens when you try to hatch up to 2-week-old eggs. I know a lot of people online say 7 days maximum, and even then, you know, they'll say 5 days. Well, we'll see. Now, there's a coating on the outside of these that keeps them good. So you can leave these on your counter for 4 or 5 weeks before they go bad. I'm curious though, what happens when you drop them in the water? Doesn't that wash it off? I think the problem is if you wash them, if you immerse them in water and then you scrub them, then you're gonna scrub that coating off that keeps them good. So I know you want that coating on there through the hatching process. I'm curious to know what happens when you wash them. I've heard that if you spray them down really good with Listerine before you hatch them, that kills the bacteria and that increases the chances of the hatch rate. So we're gonna do that. We'll do this top tray as our up to 2 week old hatch tray. We'll do the bottom tray as our maximum 7-day hatch tray, and we'll just see where it goes from there. So on this end are our oldest eggs, on this end are our newest eggs. We just got 13 more eggs today. We're gonna get more than that. We consistently get 20 to 22 eggs a day. If it's been, 5+ minutes and they haven't rolled over, then they're probably duds and they just need to be taken out. So I can tell you from the hatchability test alone that eggs up to 2 weeks old are not great candidates for hatching. They have already lost too much of their moisture, and they're turning from viable candidates for hatching to non-viable. So we're back for round 2. We've got our 20 dud eggs here. I've got 1 entire week of eggs. So these are the eggs here that are the maximum 7-day-old eggs. So we're just gonna start with the oldest, and I'm probably only gonna do half of these because once you get through half of them, it's fairly certain that the rest of these are gonna be just fine. So we're just gonna start with the oldest eggs and we'll drop them in, and already I can tell you these guys are laying on their sides, so they are viable and they'll be good to go. So that's over 1 day, some of our oldest eggs, and they're all good. And remove them, let them dry. I'm not even gonna do the rest. These are all perfectly fine. So with these, getting them wet isn't necessarily a problem. It's when you get them wet and then you rub them, that's where you're going to run into your problems. So I'm gonna go ahead and actually take all these eggs that we just put in there. I'm gonna go ahead and put them in the other tray. That way we can fill this one out. So these are our oldest eggs. Our plan with the quail is to feed them to our dogs. So they are going to be primarily meat production for our dogs. They're very low-fat meat, although we'll probably eat some quail ourselves. So that's it. We've got eggs that we have water tested. We're going to mist them with some 50% Listerine, 50% water mixture to kill any bacteria before we put them in the incubator. We're gonna let these dry, and we're gonna let the incubator get up to temperature and stabilize as far as humidity goes. All right, so it's at 99.9% is what it's set at. Now the humidity is supposed to be about 50 to 60%. You don't want it higher than that. So right now it's really high, so we're gonna let it just kind of run, see if it'll dry out a little bit. And I think we'll just leave the door open for now, and we'll see where we are then in an hour or so. So I'm super excited to see how this turns out. This is a new experiment. We're starting out a new experiment with another experiment to see if you can hatch even older eggs than 7 days old. We'll see how that works out. We've got a good clutch there. So we've got 198 eggs altogether. We're working with almost 200 eggs, and those we had picked through, and we picked only the best that we could find from the last 2 weeks. Like I said, I'm excited, but I'm also exhausted. It's been a long day. I am very tired, and I think we're gonna cut it here and call it a night.